Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. In the shadowy aftermath of the American Civil War, whispers of a lost fortune began to stir, a treasure so immense that it could have changed the fate of the defeated South. Picture it. Crates of gleaming gold, hastily loaded onto trains, guarded fiercely by desperate men clinging to the last hope of a crumbling Confederacy. Then, suddenly, it vanished without a trace. What happened to the Confederate gold? Was it hidden in the hills, buried beneath riverbeds, or spirited away to finance secret causes? This video takes you deep into one of America's most tantalizing historical mysteries. Along the way, you'll encounter secret maps, suspicious deaths, and countless theories that have captured imaginations for generations. Did Union soldiers seize it? Was it concealed by Confederate loyalists? Or has it remained untouched, waiting to be discovered? Get ready. Today, we're not just telling the story. We're peeling back the layers of myth and rumor to uncover the facts, the possibilities, and the enduring enigma of the lost Confederate treasure. By early 1865, the Confederate States of America were crumbling under the relentless pressure of Union forces. Cities had fallen, armies were surrendering, and morale was disintegrating across the South. Richmond, Virginia, the proud capital of the Confederacy, stood on the brink of collapse. As Union General Ulysses S. Grant tightened his siege, it became clear that Richmond could not be defended much longer. Amid this chaos, Confederate President Jefferson Davis and his cabinet made the fateful decision to flee. Their departure was hurried and desperate, marked by a frantic attempt to salvage what little they could of the Confederate cause. Central to this flight was the Confederate treasury, a collection of gold coins, silver bars, banknotes, and personal jewelry that had been accumulated throughout the war. These funds represented the last tangible wealth of a dying government. Officials hoped to use this treasure to sustain themselves in exile, or perhaps fund a renewed resistance. As Davis and his entourage left Richmond in April 1865, they carried the treasury with them, transporting it in wagons and guarded convoys. The fate of this treasure would soon become a central piece of one of the most enduring mysteries of American history, but at that moment, it symbolized the last desperate hope of a Confederacy rapidly slipping into oblivion. As Jefferson Davis and the remnants of the Confederate leadership fled Richmond, a ragged caravan of soldiers, government officials, and civilians followed, transporting the precious treasury southward. The scene was one of confusion and urgency. Wagons loaded with gold, silver, and valuables rattled down muddy, uneven roads, escorted by a dwindling and increasingly disorganized group of Confederate troops. Morale among the guards was low, and the crumbling discipline reflected the overall collapse of the Confederacy itself. As the caravan moved deeper into the South, it made several critical stops, weaving its way through parts of North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. In each location, Davis and his advisors faced difficult decisions: where to hide, where to seek supplies, and how best to protect the treasure from both Union pursuers and desperate Confederates who saw the treasury as a personal salvation. Every stop the Confederate caravan made, uncertainty and suspicion hung heavy in the air. The once clear mission, to protect the treasury and sustain hopes of a rebirth of the Confederacy, was dissolving into chaos. Small groups of soldiers, weary and unpaid for months, reportedly received modest amounts of gold and silver as a final act of loyalty from Confederate officials. To many of these men, who had endured years of brutal war only to see their cause collapse, such payments were not only a gesture of thanks, but a necessary means of survival. Yet, not every transaction was official or above board. Whispers spread rapidly among the ranks, and the civilian population that wagons carrying gold had vanished under the cover of night. Some said the guards, desperate and disillusioned, had simply taken the treasure for themselves. Others suggested bribery, with soldiers choosing personal fortune over loyalty to a crumbling government. These rumors grew louder in Georgia, where the caravan lingered longer than intended. The delay fueled more stories: secret burials of treasure in remote fields, hidden caches in abandoned wells, and deals struck in quiet back rooms to spirit wealth away before Union forces arrived. Meanwhile, the Union Army, sensing an opportunity to deal a final blow, pressed its pursuit. Capturing Jefferson Davis would be a symbolic victory, but recovering the Confederate treasury would be an even greater material prize. a resource that could both finance Reconstruction and cripple any lingering hopes of Confederate resurgence. Union soldiers scoured towns, interrogated locals, and watched the roads closely. In this tense, deteriorating environment, the line between truth and rumor blurred quickly. Fear, desperation, and greed created a fertile ground for myths to take root. As wagons were lost, buried, stolen, or simply forgotten amid the confusion, the trail of the Confederate gold became obscured. Even in those final days, it was clear the fate of the treasure would not be a simple story of capture or loss. It would become a legend, one shaped by gaps in memory, self-serving testimonies, and the South's yearning for lost glory. The seeds of the Confederate gold mystery were sown in the dust and exhaustion of a dying cause, destined to grow into one of America's most enduring historical enigmas. As the Confederate caravan pushed deeper into the South, the fate of its precious cargo became even more tangled and uncertain. Different accounts offer wildly conflicting versions of what happened to the gold. Some claim it was stolen outright, others insist it was hidden to keep it out of Union hands, and still others suggest it was simply lost amid the confusion and chaos of the collapsing Confederacy. What is certain, however, is that somewhere along the journey, the trail of the gold went cold. One key incident fueling the mystery involves documented cases of theft and looting. As discipline broke down among Confederate troops, some soldiers, seeing the end was inevitable, turned on their own cause. Wagons were ransacked either openly or under the cover of night, with men making off with coins, jewelry, and bullion. Stories emerged of entire carts disappearing after late-night raids, and of small groups of men sneaking away with saddlebags full of treasure. In some areas, bands of desperate locals, many of them starving from years of war, joined in the plundering, blurring the lines between civilian and soldier, patriot and opportunist. Adding to the confusion were persistent rumors of secret burials. Some Confederate officers, unwilling to see the gold fall into Union hands, allegedly ordered parts of the treasury to be hidden in remote locations, buried beneath ancient oak trees, sunk into swampy rivers, or sealed inside abandoned wells. Legends tell of coded maps, hidden markers, and whispered instructions passed down through generations. These tales often point to the dense woods of Georgia or the marshlands of South Carolina as the last known resting places of the missing fortune. Mysterious figures loom large in these stories. Certain Confederate officers entrusted with the treasury's safety are suspected of double-dealing, either absconding with portions of the gold or collaborating with local bandits to hide it for personal gain. Some accounts even suggest that groups of freedmen, scavengers, and outlaws stumbled upon abandoned or lightly guarded wagons, taking what they could and vanishing into history without a trace. In many cases, Union soldiers themselves are implicated, accused of seizing or secretly pocketing whatever riches they could find during their relentless pursuit of Davis and his shrinking entourage. When Jefferson Davis was captured on May 10, 1865, near Irwinville, Georgia, Union soldiers expected not just to seize the leader of the fallen Confederacy, but also to reclaim the vast treasury they believed he carried. Instead, they found Davis with only a modest amount of personal belongings, and almost no trace of the rumored millions in Confederate gold. The absence of the fortune was glaring, and in that vacuum of certainty, countless theories began to flourish. The realization that the Confederate gold had vanished was both stunning and suspicious. It wasn't as if the treasure had disappeared all at once. Rather, it seemed to have unraveled slowly, piece by piece, in a way that reflected the broader collapse of the Confederate cause itself. With the chain of command breaking down, discipline among the troops evaporating, and lawlessness gripping the South, the gold became vulnerable at every stage of the caravan's journey. Some of it was likely siphoned off by soldiers who saw no future in fighting a lost war. Other portions may have been hidden by officers who believed they were preserving resources for a future Southern resurgence, or simply for their own profit. The land itself played a role. In the chaos of retreat, with Union forces harassing Confederate remnants at every turn, there was no time for carefully recorded burials or guarded stashes. Treasure could have been hurriedly buried in shallow graves, tossed into rivers, hidden in forest hollows, places easy to lose track of amid the shifting tides of war. Add to this the reality that many involved were either killed, scattered, or captured before they could return to recover what they had hidden, and it becomes clear how the gold could dissolve into legend so quickly. Meanwhile, the human element cannot be underestimated. Desperation, greed, confusion, and fear all combine to create an environment ripe for betrayal and opportunism. It's likely that multiple groups, Confederate officers, rogue soldiers, desperate civilians, and even opportunistic Union soldiers, all took pieces of the treasure for themselves. Without a central authority to oversee or account for the gold, no complete record of its fate could ever exist. Each small theft, each hidden cache, each lost wagon contributed to the broader disappearance. The vanishing of the Confederate gold thus became more than just a historical mystery. It evolved into a powerful American legend. Over time, treasure hunters, historians, and storytellers have layered new myths and conspiracies onto the story, from secret Confederate brotherhoods guarding the gold for future generations to coded maps hidden in old diaries. The reality, however, is likely far less dramatic, yet no less fascinating. The Confederate treasure was swallowed by the disorder of war and scattered by the conflicting ambitions of countless individuals. Its enduring allure lies not just in the hope of discovering literal gold, but in the compelling human drama behind its disappearance, a story of loyalty and betrayal, of desperation and survival, of the final collapse of a dream that had torn a nation apart. Would you like me to move into the next section where we dive into the modern treasure hunts and enduring theories? The disappearance of the Confederate gold has spawned numerous theories, each attempting to answer the central question: where did the gold go? These theories have captivated treasure hunters, historians, and conspiracy theorists alike, each offering a plausible yet speculative solution to one of the greatest mysteries in post-Civil War history. Theory 1. Buried somewhere in Georgia or Alabama. One of the most enduring and popular theories suggests that the gold was buried somewhere in the rural landscape of Georgia or Alabama. These two states are critical to the last leg of the Confederate treasury's journey and became the focal point for treasure hunters who believed the gold was hidden in the woods, swamps, or even in the foundations of long-forgotten buildings. Some local legends claim that Confederate officers buried their portion of the treasure in secret locations, carefully marking the sites with cryptic symbols or relying on oral traditions to guide future generations to its recovery. One specific area that has attracted interest is the swampland near the Oconee River in Georgia. Locals have claimed to find clues that point to hidden caches of gold in this area, though no substantial evidence has ever been produced. Over the years, treasure hunters have undertaken numerous excavations in search of the gold, but like many other expeditions, they've returned empty-handed. Despite this, the belief that the gold lies somewhere in Georgia or Alabama continues to be a cornerstone of Confederate gold lore. Theory 2. Hidden in secret societies like the Knights of the Golden Circle. Another widely circulated theory ties the fate of the Confederate gold to secret societies, particularly the Knights of the Golden Circle, KGC. The KGC was an underground organization that sought to expand the Confederacy's influence in North America and potentially beyond, and some historians speculate that they might have played a role in the disappearance of the gold. This group, which had both Southern sympathies and conspiratorial leanings, was believed to have access to covert networks and resources that could help conceal the treasure. According to some versions of the theory, members of the KGC were tasked with moving and hiding the Confederate gold to ensure its survival for a future resurgence of the Southern cause. They allegedly smuggled the gold across the borders, possibly to locations as far away as Mexico or Cuba, or even farther afield, to keep it out of Union hands. The Knights were known for their secrecy and their use of codes, so it's possible that if the gold was hidden by the KGC, it would have been placed in one or more secret locations, with its whereabouts encrypted in cryptic symbols, or hidden within KGC documents. However, much of this remains speculative, with few concrete ties between the Knights and the Confederate treasury. Theory 3. Shipped abroad to finance a new Confederacy. A more ambitious theory posits that the Confederate gold was shipped overseas, perhaps to Europe or the Caribbean, to finance a second Confederacy or to fund further rebellion. According to this theory, Confederate leaders, including Jefferson Davis, planned to use the gold to establish a new Confederacy in exile, one that would continue to fight the Union or form alliances with other nations. The gold would have been shipped to European ports or perhaps a hidden bank account where it could be safely kept, beyond the reach of the Union. This theory gained traction because of the turbulent political situation in post-war Europe. There were several European countries sympathetic to the South during the Civil War, and some believed that these nations might have been willing to support a new confederacy in exchange for financial aid or strategic alliances. While no definitive evidence exists to support this theory, it offers an intriguing possibility, especially considering the international interest in the Confederacy and its cause. Theory 4. Stolen and quietly spent over decades. The fourth theory is perhaps the most cynical, suggesting that the gold was stolen almost immediately after the Confederate government collapsed and quietly spent over the following decades. This theory holds that Confederate officers, Union soldiers, and even local opportunists, in the confusion of war and its aftermath, took the gold for themselves, keeping its existence hidden from history. Instead of being buried or stored, in a secret society's vault, the gold was likely divided among the individuals who had access to it, disappearing into private hands over time. According to this theory, the gold didn't vanish into myth because of its abandonment or deliberate hiding. It was stolen and used to enrich those involved in its transportation and disappearance. Some believe that wealthy families in the South may have used portions of the gold to maintain their status or fund Reconstruction efforts, while others suggest that the Union soldiers who captured Confederate officers might have quietly pocketed their share, knowing the treasure's worth. Over the years, the mystery of the gold was perpetuated by the secrecy of those involved, with no one willing to come forward to reveal its true fate. Each of these theories offers a different interpretation of what happened to the Confederate gold, and each is backed by fragments of evidence or lore that fuel further speculation. While no definitive answer has emerged, these theories continue to drive interest in the mystery, inspiring treasure hunters, historians, and conspiracy enthusiasts to search for clues that could eventually solve the case. The Confederate gold remains a symbol of the conflict and chaos that followed the Civil War, as well as a reminder of the enduring power of legend in shaping historical narratives. The mystery of the Confederate gold has continued to intrigue treasure hunters, historians, and enthusiasts long after the Civil War ended. Over the years, numerous strange finds and intriguing clues have surfaced, feeding the belief that the gold is still hidden somewhere, waiting to be discovered. While no one has yet struck gold, some of these discoveries offer tantalizing hints, and the quest for the treasure has led to several notable expeditions. Strange finds. Over the years, one of the most striking aspects of the search for the Confederate gold is the strange and seemingly coincidental finds that have occurred throughout the years. These discoveries range from scattered coins to strange relics that hint at the gold's potential existence in certain regions. For example, during various digs in the southern states, treasure hunters have uncovered Confederate-era coins, old bullet casings, and other relics, sometimes in the exact areas where the gold was believed to have passed through. While these discoveries are not direct evidence of the treasure, they do suggest that the gold was once in the area, or that something valuable was hidden nearby. In some cases, these relics have even been interpreted by treasure hunters as subtle markers pointing to the location of a larger stash. In other cases, locals in Georgia, Alabama, and South Carolina have reported finding caches of old Confederate jewelry, silver spoons, and even gold nuggets. However, no one has ever found the treasure in full, leaving the mystery of the Confederate gold unresolved. Some believe that these smaller finds may be pieces of the treasure that were buried or hidden hastily as Confederate leaders tried to evade capture, while others suspect that these finds are the result of later treasure hunters stumbling across remnants of a larger stash. Modern treasure hunters and historians' expeditions in the modern era, the quest for the Confederate gold has continued to captivate the public imagination, with treasure hunters and historians embarking on expeditions to solve the mystery. Over the years, numerous treasure hunters have scoured the southern landscape, using metal detectors, digging equipment, and even advanced technologies such as ground-penetrating radar in their search for the elusive gold. One notable group of treasure hunters, known as the Confederate treasure hunters, began their search in the 1980s, focusing on areas in Georgia and Alabama where the Confederate treasury was last believed to have passed through. their expeditions, were based on a combination of folklore, local legends, and historical records that suggested the gold may have been hidden in these regions. While they found relics and coins, they have never found the treasure itself, but their efforts brought renewed attention to the search and further fueled the legend. Historians have also taken part in the modern search for the Confederate gold, seeking to piece together the historical evidence and connect the dots between eyewitness accounts, documents, and the physical clues left behind. Some historians believe that understanding the final movements of the Confederate treasury could lead to the discovery of the gold, while others focus on tracking down the soldiers, officers, and civilians who were involved in the transportation of the treasure. These efforts have yet to yield any definitive results, but they continue to provide valuable insight into the mystery. Famous search efforts. There have been numerous famous search efforts and expeditions related to the search for Confederate gold, some of which have gained widespread attention and added to the legend. One of the most well-known searches took place around Lake Michigan, where rumors suggested that Confederate treasure had been hidden or sunk in the lake during the final days of the Civil War. According to local lore, a Confederate ship carrying gold and other valuables was forced to dump its cargo into the waters of Lake Michigan to prevent it from falling into Union hands. This theory gained traction in the early 20th century, and treasure hunters have since scoured the lake's shores and waters in hopes of finding the lost gold. Despite numerous expeditions, no treasure has ever been found in Lake Michigan, but the story has contributed to the enduring myth of the Confederate gold and the belief that it may have been hidden in unusual or unexpected places. Another famous search effort occurred in the 1960s, when a group of treasure hunters claimed to have located a large stash of Confederate gold buried near a small town in Georgia. Using metal detectors and digging equipment, they unearthed several old coins and relics, which they believed to be part of the lost treasure. However, their search was ultimately unsuccessful in finding the gold itself, and the treasure remains elusive. More recently, in the 21st century, treasure hunters have continued to search for the Confederate gold, using advanced technology such as drones and satellite imagery to scan the landscape for potential clues. These modern expeditions have been fueled by a renewed interest in the Civil War and its lasting impact on American history. Some treasure hunters have even partnered with historians and archaeologists to ensure that their search methods are thorough and respectful of the historical sites they explore. Ongoing mystery and continued search. Despite these various searches and findings, the Confederate gold has never been recovered, and the mystery remains one of the most enduring legends of post-Civil War America. The treasure is as elusive as ever, with each new search only adding more layers to the myth. Whether it was stolen and quietly spent over the years, buried in secret locations, or lost to history, the Confederate gold continues to fascinate and mystify. The search for the gold is not just about finding treasure. It's also about uncovering a piece of American history that has been shrouded in secrecy and speculation for over 150 years. As new theories, technologies, and search methods emerge, the mystery of the Confederate gold remains alive, sparking the imagination of treasure hunters, historians, and anyone interested in the untold stories of America's past. The story of the Confederate gold is a fascinating blend of fact and legend, where elements of truth have become intertwined with myth and speculation over time. While certain aspects of the tale are grounded in historical events, much of what has become the popular narrative surrounding the treasure is rooted in post-war cultural mythmaking, fueled by both regional pride and the broader fascination with lost treasures. Historical evidence versus mythmaking. The historical evidence for the Confederate gold is, to say the least, sparse. We know that the Confederate government did possess substantial wealth in the form of gold, silver, and jewelry, and that it was in the midst of moving this treasure in the final months of the Civil War. We also know that President Jefferson Davis and his cabinet were keenly aware of the importance of safeguarding the Confederacy's wealth, especially as Union forces closed in. As Davis fled from Richmond, Virginia in April 1865, he took with him the remnants of the Confederate treasury, hoping to continue the fight or use the funds for the establishment of a new Confederacy elsewhere. However, there is little concrete evidence regarding what exactly happened to this treasure during Davis's flight. We do know that Confederate forces were moving it southward, but records of its exact location and movements are often contradictory or unclear. Soldiers and officers who were involved in the transportation of the treasure offered differing accounts, and many of them were never able to explain exactly what happened to it, further adding to the mystery. As the years passed and the Confederacy was defeated, the idea of a hidden Confederate gold treasure began to take root in the Southern imagination. In the aftermath of the war, stories of the treasure being buried, hidden in secret locations, or stolen became widespread, and these tales began to intertwine with local folklore. The idea of the treasure being lost or stolen became a symbol of the South's lost cause, a final missing piece that could somehow restore dignity or honor to the Confederate effort. Post-war Southern culture and mythmaking, the creation of the legend around the Confederate gold was not merely a product of chance. It was shaped by the cultural and political climate of the post-Civil War South. Following the Confederacy's defeat, the Southern states faced both economic devastation and a crisis of identity. Many Southerners struggled to come to terms with the loss of the war and the collapse of their way of life, and some turned to the myth of the Confederate gold as a way of clinging to the idea of Southern independence and honor. The stories of hidden treasures and lost fortunes began to take on a romanticized quality, giving Southerners something to hold on to in the midst of Reconstruction and loss. This idea of a treasure buried somewhere in the South became a way to symbolize the Confederate cause, something valuable, precious, and ultimately lost to time, much like the Southern way of life itself. In addition to this regional pride, the myth of the Confederate gold also served as a way to perpetuate certain post-war ideals and narratives. For many, the idea of the treasure represented a lost opportunity for a second Confederacy or a final act of resistance against the Union. Some saw it as the last chance to right the wrongs of the war, while others believed that the treasure was part of a greater plan to establish a new independent Southern nation. This myth-making was part of a broader Southern lost cause ideology which sought to romanticize the Confederacy and frame it as a noble but doomed struggle. As a result, many of the legends surrounding the Confederate gold are colored by this desire to preserve a sense of Southern pride and identity in the aftermath of the war. The treasure became not just a symbol of wealth, but a symbol of a lost cause that was romanticized and mythologized over time. The growth of the legend. The legend of the Confederate gold grew in popularity as the years passed, particularly as the South faced difficult economic conditions and the growing pains of Reconstruction. With no definitive answers about the treasure's fate, the myth continued to evolve. It wasn't long before the tale began to appear in books, newspapers, and even oral traditions, further cementing its place in American folklore. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the story of the Confederate gold was firmly established as a classic American mystery. Treasure hunters, historians, and thrill seekers began searching for the gold, and some of the earliest expeditions, although unsuccessful, only fueled public interest. These expeditions were frequently chronicled in the media, helping to spread the idea of the lost Confederate gold and reinforcing its place in popular culture. The legend of the Confederate gold also benefited from its inherent mystery. Because the treasure had never been definitively found, it was easy for myths and rumors to proliferate. Stories of hidden treasure were fertile ground for adventure tales, and the promise of discovering the lost gold tantalized the public. This created a cycle where the treasure hunt itself became as much about the pursuit of the unknown as it was about finding the gold itself. In modern times, the legend continues to captivate the imagination of treasure hunters and historians alike. While there are still no concrete answers about the fate of the Confederate gold, the mystery remains an enduring part of Southern folklore and a symbol of both the war's lost cause and the desire to reclaim a piece of history. Fact versus legend. What we know at its core, the story of the Confederate gold is as much a tale of myth-making as it is about historical facts. While there is some truth to the idea that the Confederate treasury was moved and lost during the final days of the Civil War, much of what has been passed down is based on speculation, rumor, and the cultural need for a lost Southern treasure. The evidence for its existence and location is fragmented, and many of the most enduring stories are likely exaggerated or entirely fictional. Yet the fact that the treasure has never been recovered only adds to its mystique. Each new theory, or search only builds upon the layers of myth that have surrounded the Confederate gold for over a century and a half. What began as a historical event has evolved into an American legend, one that blends fact with fiction and remains one of the most enduring mysteries in the country's history. As we continue to search for the truth behind the Confederate gold, we are left with the question: is it merely a story we tell ourselves, or is there a hidden treasure waiting to be found? The story of the Confederate gold has captivated generations, blending elements of treasure, betrayal, and mystery into a narrative that still intrigues many today. From the desperate flight of Jefferson Davis to the chaotic movements of the Confederate treasury, the treasure has become more than just a part of history. It has evolved into a legend. Whether it was buried in Georgia, hidden by secret societies, or lost to time, the allure of the Confederate gold continues to spark imaginations and fuel treasure hunts. What makes the mystery of the Confederate gold so compelling is not just the possibility of wealth, but the sense of betrayal, lost opportunity, and the chaotic final days of the Confederacy. The idea that this treasure could have been lost or even intentionally hidden adds layers to the story, making it not just about a forgotten fortune, but about the struggle for survival and identity in a fractured nation. But the question remains: could the lost Confederate gold still be out there, waiting to be found? Or has it truly disappeared into the sands of history, leaving only the myths behind? We want to hear from you. Do you have a favorite theory about where the Confederate gold might be hidden? Or perhaps you believe the treasure is gone forever? Leave your thoughts in the comments below and join the conversation. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more mysteries and historical explorations.